One of the most brilliant things about our society is that we have the ability to have our own opinion about topics. My name is Megan Osborne Harrell, and today I'm going to be talking to you about persuasive speeches. So what is something that you feel very strongly about? You have an opinion that you 100% believe you cannot be swayed on. Today we're going to be talking about persuasive speeches. What exactly are they? Different types of persuasive speeches, and some tips to help you make your persuasive speech the strongest that it can be. Let's get started. Persuasion is the act of creating, reinforcing, or changing people's thoughts or actions. So a persuasive speech is where you take opinion and facts, and you work to convince people to make a change. Maybe you want them to make a change physically. You want them to start doing or stop doing something that they were doing in the past. Maybe you want them to think a different way, to take a whole new approach, to open their eyes. In this type of speech, your goal is to be an advocate for the topic that you are talking about. And the ultimate end to that goal is for your audience to take action. A persuasive speech is also one that is backed up by facts and research. Anybody can have an opinion on anything, but it is very important to have credible information that backs up your ideas and beliefs that you share in your speech. I think a persuasive speech is one of the most difficult types of speeches to give, and to change someone else's opinion completely can be a daunting task. But let's talk about some different types of persuasive speeches and some ways that we can help you be the best you can be. So now let's talk about the three different kinds of persuasive speeches. There's questions of fact, questions of value, and questions of policy. When you look at a question of fact, you're basically saying, is this true or false? Do I believe it to be real or not real? And when thinking of questions of fact, you have to think, why do I believe this? Or why do I not believe this? Are there any facts to back this up on either side? Is Bigfoot real or is he a made-up character? That's a question of fact. Now let's talk about questions of value. A question of value is something that is morally or ethically right, something that you feel in your heart to be true. A question of value is usually not a black and white question. It's something that can't really be proven with physical evidence. It has to be something that you feel in your heart one way or the other. Things like religious topics often fall into the category of questions of value. And lastly, questions of policy. Should this be a rule or a law? Questions of policy aren't really things that you feel in your heart, and they're not things that you can prove to be true or false, but they are things you can give a law to or a rule, and the members of the community should need to comply. Think about the seatbelt law. Should it be a law that all passengers of a car should wear a seatbelt at all times? It's whether it should be or shouldn't be a law. So now let's talk about some tips on how to make your persuasive speech the best that it can be. First off, you need to be credible about your subject. What does this mean? It means that you know what it is. You understand what it's about, and you believe in it wholeheartedly. Now, even if you have been listening to or studying or looking at this subject for years and years, you have got to have data to back up your evidence. It's really important that your audience believes what it is that you are saying to be true, and that they trust you. For instance, if you come in and you give us a bunch of information about something that we think maybe is unlikely that you've ever thought about before you decided to give this speech, that might not be the best subject for you to choose. On the other hand, if you've always been interested in animal rights and you've been working at the animal shelter for the last 2 summers, that's a great reason for us to believe your credibility. So be sure to mention that at the beginning of your speech. One tip that I love to give my students is think about the other side. What is the other side going to say about your speech? What questions are they going to ask? Where are your weak points? If you can pinpoint those before giving your speech and go ahead and beat them to the punch, then you're going to be able to answer those naysayers before they even have time to ask the question. When doing research, be careful not to use sources that some of your audience members might not find credible. These might be things like religious books or papers written by people who have a reputation of maybe being a little bit too left-wing or too right-wing. You want to try to find some things that can meet the needs of all of your audience members and meet the needs of your speech. Now, I'm not saying never to use these sources. I'm just saying be careful that you don't depend on only one source to provide all of your information when some of the members of your audience might roll their eyes that that's the source you chose. Speaking of sources, be sure to have several. I always like to choose some kind of article from a reputable news source, some sort of a hardback book that comes in actual print that I can touch with my fingers, and then some kind of journal entry, like something from a scientific journal or a historical journal. So be sure to have several credible sources when doing your research. Then, as you're giving your speech and you're using those really awesome pieces of information that you have researched and vetted and made sure that they were credible, that you tell us where you got it. If it's a website, don't tell us, I found this at www.q4412/. Don't give us all of that information. Just tell us what the actual site is called. Something like thescientificjournal.com, that's a source. And Google is not a source. Please don't cite Google as one of your sources. Another great tip, don't underestimate the awesomeness of interviews. If you know someone who personally has had an experience with this topic and you know that what they have to say is really gonna do some great stuff on persuading your audience, feel free to interview them. It can be something that can really help our heartstrings believe what you have to say. Also, a persuasive speech can be a highly emotional speech. You can really use words to tug at people's heartstrings. Think about how some words have positive or negative connotations. Now by that, I mean, if someone doesn't spend a lot of money, you could say they're miserly, or you can say they're thrifty. Those are the same word, but they have two different connotations. One is a positive and one is a negative. So if you are trying to explain in a speech about your state's government that they are not spending a lot of money at this time, if you want it to be negative, say that they're being miserly. And if you want it to be positive, say that they're being thrifty. The words you choose can make a big difference in what your audience feels. I say this in every single video, but don't forget your note cards and don't forget your visual aid. A PowerPoint is excellent when doing a persuasive speech. Another tip I have is be careful in using too many numbers all in a row. Your audience tends to glaze over when they're presented with tons of numbers. So if you have a lot of numbers to give, you can do several different things. You can round them off and give like an estimated ballpark figure. You can split up your numbers into several different sentences and several different subjects and places in your speech so that they don't get bombarded by all those numbers at the same time. Or you can pick and choose which numbers are the most important here and only tell them one at a time. Another thing, if you are trying really hard to figure out how you can inspire your audience to make a change and to think differently about something or to try something new, watch some infomercials. Dude, there are some crazy guys out there doing awesome infomercials that are the perfect example of how to persuade your audience. They're upbeat, they give you tons of reasons that you can't deny with your eyes that their product works. And finally, at the end, they make you feel so good about yourself that you want to believe what it is. You can apply some of these tactics when giving your persuasive speech. Lastly, in my tips, be careful not to bite off more than you can chew. Don't choose a topic that's so broad that you're gonna have to get information from tons of different sources on tons of different topics that go underneath that topic. Try to stick to one so you can really hone what it is that you're saying and give your audience the very best information you can fit into your speech. Today we talked about persuasive speeches. We talked about what they are, the 3 different types, and some tips to help you make your persuasive speech the strongest it can be. So the next time you have to speak to someone about your strong opinion on a topic, hopefully you can feel confident using some of these tips to help you be credible, have your ideas backed up by fact, and be clear and concise in your ideas. My name is Megan Osborne Harrell, and you got this, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Say bye. Bye.